Have you ever really stopped to think about what it takes to just flip on a light switch? I mean, we totally take it for granted, right? But keeping the lights on for over 1 billion people, well, that's one of the biggest engineering and management puzzles on the entire planet. Today, we're going to look at how the world's largest utility company found and fixed a hidden multi-billion-dollar problem.
Let's just start with a number. Take a look at this. Yeah, that's 1.6 times trillion yuan. So what on earth does a number that massive even represent?
Well, that was the total value of all the assets owned by the State Grid Corporation of China, way back in 2008. We are talking about the biggest public utility in the world. Its job? Powering a huge chunk of the human population. This isn't just some company, it's a colossal machine of pure infrastructure.
And to really get your head around this, you have to appreciate the just mind-boggling scale of what they were dealing with.
Now, what's so fascinating is the state of the grid back then. It was enormous. We're talking enough transmission lines to wrap around the entire planet more than a dozen times over. But get this, it was also super modern. Almost all of its equipment, like 80 to 90% of it, was less than 15 years old. So on paper, this young, powerful giant should have been absolutely unstoppable.
But, and there's always a but, hiding inside this brand new trillion yuan network was a really fundamental and incredibly expensive problem.
See, from the outside looking in, everything seemed perfect. They were building at a crazy pace, using all the latest tech. But the data was telling a very different story. It was pointing to a massive, systemic leak of value.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. The global benchmark for major grid equipment is a lifespan of about 30 to 40 years. But State Grid's brand new, cutting-edge stuff, it was failing in less than 20. They were throwing away decades of value on their equipment. It's kind of like buying a brand new car and having the engine die before you've even finished making the payments. Just not good.
So what was going on? The problem wasn't the gear itself, it was the entire management philosophy. You had each department, planning, construction, operations, maintenance, all stuck in their own little worlds. The planning team would try to keep the upfront costs super low. The construction team would focus on building as fast as possible, and the poor operations team was just left to clean up the mess. Nobody, and I mean nobody, was looking at the whole picture. So, to fix this, State Grid knew they needed a totally new way of thinking. They came up with a philosophy they called Life Cycle Asset Management, or LCM for short.
And this is the absolute key right here. Instead of trying to make each little piece of the process perfect on its own, LCM is all about optimizing the entire system over the entire life of the asset. It asks a really simple but profound question. What choices can we make right now, in the design stage, that will give us the best possible performance and the lowest total cost over the next 40 years? And answering that question meant they had to find this really delicate balance between three things that are always pulling against each other.
Okay, so you've got this three-way tug of war. You always want the absolute maximum safety and reliability. You also want maximum efficiency and performance from your equipment. But you want to get all of that for the lowest possible cost. Not just today, but over the asset's entire life. See, skimping on design might save you $1 up front, but it's going to cost you a fortune in maintenance and create safety risks down the road. LCAM is the art of finding that perfect sweet spot between all three.
So, having a philosophy is great and all, but how do you actually get an organization with over 1 million employees to follow it? You need a rock-solid blueprint.
State Grid started by building this really clear top-down structure. Right at the top, you have the strategic layer, the leadership, setting the big picture goals. Then the management layer takes those goals and turns them into actual policies. And finally, the execution layer, the folks out in the field, have a crystal clear set of tasks to carry out. This whole setup makes sure that the grand strategy actually makes it all the way down to every single substation.
All right, a hierarchy is a good start, but how do you actually coordinate all the work? How do you make sure the team designing a transformer is thinking about the poor folks who are going to have to maintain that thing 20 years from now? This is where the real genius of the system is. They created this two-dimensional grid. Look at the columns. Those represent the stages of an asset's life, from the drawing board all the way to retirement. And the rows? Those are the management principles, strategy, process, evaluation, support, that you have to apply at every single one of those stages. This simple grid created one unified framework, making sure that everyone, everywhere in the company, was literally on the same page.
So, what was the actual payoff for this massive organizational rethink? Well, the projected results were, honestly, they were just staggering. First up, they were projected to add 5 full years to the average lifespan of their equipment. They were literally getting those lost decades back.
Next, a projected 10% drop in the total life cycle cost for every single piece of equipment. And when you're talking about a trillion yuan asset base, that adds up fast.
It adds up to this. The bottom line, an estimated savings of over 20 billion yuan every single year just from buying less new stuff. That is a massive, massive return on investing in better management.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that State Grid completely turned things around by switching from short-term, siloed thinking to long-term, big-picture optimization. They proved that investing a little more time and money upfront in smart planning can save you billions in the long run. And in the process, they created a world-class blueprint for managing critical infrastructure at an almost unbelievable scale.
And all of that brings us to one final forward-looking question.
Think about it. This entire framework we've been talking about was developed over a decade ago. This was before the huge explosion in AI, smart grids, and renewables. So if this level of systems thinking was possible back then, what kind of insane optimization and intelligence is being designed into the power grids that are going to support our future? It's a pretty fascinating thing to think about.